So, good evening if you're here in India and Asia, and good morning, good afternoon, good night in other places. Um, my name's Tashi, and I first want to thank all those who worked so hard to coordinate and prepare and deliver this course on the view and path of Buddhism. So I'd like to thank Ina for the amazing job she's done on all the logistics, which were very complicated. I want to thank Andy, Adrian, and Ken, our course instructors for the first 6 classes, and Samten Nagarajan, who kindly prepared the curriculum and readings, and Helena Wang and Jingwei for translating into Chinese, and Rena and Elroy for all their help. So thank you to everyone who has done a great job in getting this started. And a cheerful Roman New Year to everyone. I think studying the Dharma together seems like a jolly good way to start this new year. So just to give a little background on this course, the course began actually very modestly to assist our Indian meditation instructors and to enable Datun participants in India to join their intensive practice with the Buddhist view. Datun, for those who don't know, is the 4-week Shamatha Vipassana retreat that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche established as the foundation for bringing the Buddha Dharma into the modern world. And for Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Datun was actually a prerequisite for entry to the Vajrayana teachings. So we've now had 6 Datuns in India, and the 7th will be at Deer Park in India later this year. When we opened the course to other interested students, we actually had no idea of the scale of interest. We were overwhelmed and also delighted at the response. And you'll see that from the readings that while this course is actually aimed at newer students, you can tell from the incredible depth and subtlety of the readings that it's also entirely suited to so-called advanced practitioners. And I have to start by saying that the bottom line is that this course would not exist without Dzongtsa Khyentse Rinpoche's deep devotion to Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and his hosting our Datuns at his centers in India. Both these great masters are Rime tradition masters who studied with Kyabje Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche. And in fact, there's incredibly close ties between these two lineages. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's previous incarnation was a root guru for Dzongtsa Khyentse Rinpoche's previous incarnation, who in turn wrote the supplication to the Trungpa Tulkus. So we have to acknowledge at the start that we wouldn't be gathered here today without these two great masters and without the close and profound ties between these two great lineages. So I want to just start by repeating what we've said in the mailings. In doing this course, you do make a core commitment, and that is to keep up with the weekly readings and classes. And that's because each class builds on the previous one, and it won't make sense without the previous one. We can't study the second noble truth without trying to wrap our minds around the first one. So this is your core commitment. Now, if time zones, like in Australia, New Zealand, or life circumstances stop you joining us live online, then it's totally fine to listen to the recording of any class you miss, so long as you do that before the next class. But if you can join online, that's all the better, because group motivation and discipline are tremendously powerful Sangha support for our study and our practice. So a few housekeeping items at the beginning. Most of you have already filled out the participant details form, but if you haven't already done so and you genuinely intend to continue with the course, please fill it out quickly right after this class. We really need that information to plan properly. And please come a few minutes early to each class so we can start right on time. I also want to mention that after each class, you'll receive an email with a recording link for the last class, the next week's readings, and links to the course website and other information. So after today's introductory presentation on the First Noble Truth by Andy Karr, you'll all be assigned automatically to small breakout discussion groups for about 20 minutes. And our presenter today, Andy Karr, will give us the questions for consideration, reflection, and sharing experience in those discussion groups. Please keep your remarks in those discussion groups brief so that everyone has a chance to participate. After the breakout groups, we'll come together again with the full group for questions you can ask Andy and about these initial readings, and also for Andy's final closing remarks and summary. The breakout groups today will be informal, but from next week on, we plan to have them more structured with assigned discussion facilitators. For this first class, we've tried to arrange simultaneous translation to Chinese, though we can't always continue that. But on an ongoing basis, we will have some support for Mandarin speakers, including breakout discussion groups in Chinese led by Helena Wang, plus verbal and written Chinese language summaries of classes. For those in Australia and New Zealand whose time zones stop them participating live, there'll be a separate group meeting to listen to the class recordings and have discussion. Now, in all of these arrangements, I just ask you please to bear with us that all of us doing this are 100% volunteers. So I apologize if things are not always as professional and glitch-free as we would wish. So to give one example, we really do encourage you to buy the books we'll use for the course if you can, especially the core text for the 10 weeks on the Śrāvakayāna view and path. And that core text is The Truth of Suffering and the Path of Liberation by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. But knowing that many of you cannot do so or haven't yet been able to buy those books, we've made electronic copies of the weekly readings available to you, and we'll do that each week. The trouble is that making those copies does compromise the quality of the copies you receive, so I'm just asking you please to bear with us in handling challenges like that. We're doing our best. So our presenter today, Andy Karr, will focus on the First Noble Truth that you've read about in chapter 1 of our core text. But since the other two readings for today from the Profound Treasury of Dharma and Words of My Perfect Teacher relate to this course as a whole, Andy asked me to say a few introductory words about those readings, because those readings are about how to study and listen to the Dharma altogether. There's no way I can do justice to the profound instructions given in those readings in just a few words, so I won't even try. All I can say is please read them carefully. Those readings are about how to relate to this course as a whole, how to study the Dharma with joy and with discipline. It's a very different way of studying than studying at school or university, as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche shows. The readings are about how to be a worthy vessel for these profound teachings and to avoid traps like being an upside-down vessel or a vessel with holes or poison in it. That's also in those readings. And they're about why study and practice are both absolutely necessary, like two wings of a bird. how shamatha practice sharpens prajna and intelligence, and how study enables you to enter the bodhisattva path and transmit the truth of the Dharma to others. And that's why we're going to actually start this session and others with some basic shamatha practice that will help us hear the Dharma accurately. And the readings in the Profound Treasury of Dharma also introduce you to the three threes of Dharma study, the threefold logic of ground, path, and fruition, the three trainings of Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna, and the three aspects of Prajna, hearing, contemplating, and meditating. In fact, you'll be surprised how Trungpa Rinpoche advises us to contemplate the teachings we'll hear. That'll make us listen differently. So please read that in these Profound Treasury of Dharma teachings. Also, you'll find those readings from the Profound Treasury of Dharma that are copied for you for this week on how to study the Dharma. You'll find them intensely personal. Trungpa Rinpoche talks about how hearing the Dharma involves our whole being and every moment of our lives, how it relates directly to our present situation, circumstances, and experience, and how hearing the Dharma can make us into a dharmic person. So this is all in those readings. He also tells us, and this is a warning, how studying and practicing the Dharma might sometimes make us feel overwhelmed and even wretched. And he advises us on how we can overcome our resistance. Studying the Dharma, he says, is really hard work, but it's also wonderfully joyful, uplifting, cheerful, and enlightening. And it gives us tremendous confidence. In short, those readings are about how to relate to this course as a whole. So please do read them. So on the first noble truth and the introduction to the Śrāvakayāna view, I'm really delighted that Andy Karr, a longtime student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who has studied and practiced the Dharma more than 50 years actually, has kindly agreed to lead 3 of our opening classes. Andy himself has written 2 highly acclaimed books on the Buddhist view and path. So we couldn't wish for a better start to this course. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Andy Karr.
I'd like to add my welcome to Tashi's and particularly to those of you who are new or relatively new to the Dharma. I'm delighted we're doing this together. I also want to give an especially warm welcome to those of you from the noble land of India who are joining this, who are carrying on the Buddha's tradition through the practice of shamatha vipassana at the Datuns. And it's terrific that that is happening. So I want to thank you and encourage you to carry on with that. So to begin today, we'll start with doing a little meditation practice. Trungpa Rinpoche regarded the sitting practice of meditation as the absolute essential foundation for everything that he taught, and the absolute foundation for the Buddhist path altogether. I'll give some very brief meditation instructions now. I'm sure many of you have already received meditation instruction. You may be doing something very similar to what I present or something different. I'll encourage you that while we are doing this course together, that you practice in the style that Trungpa Rinpoche encouraged us to do. So, we'll keep it very simple. The first point of the practice is posture. Having a good, wakeful posture is essential for having a good, wakeful mind. If you're sitting on the ground, which I suspect most of us aren't today, as we're all in front of screens somewhere, you're probably in a chair. If you're sitting on the ground, try to sit with legs crossed. You can use half lotus or any posture that is comfortable. If you're sitting in a chair, please have your feet flat on the ground. I would encourage you, if you possibly can, not to lean back in your chair, but to sit upright, loosely straight. When you lean, your mind sort of leans. When you sit upright, it encourages wakefulness. You could put your hands on your knees or use the meditation mudra if you prefer. And the most important point of posture is to have a good sense of your head and your shoulders, wakefulness in your head and shoulders, some sense of being uplifted. And that applies to whether you're sitting on a cushion on the ground or in a chair. So those are the key points of posture. Mainly, it's have a good, solid seat, your back loosely straight, and a sense of your head and shoulders being lifted up. So let's just take a moment to feel our posture. Second point of the practice, hopefully you're still breathing. And as you breathe out, your mind can go out with the breath. You can follow the breath out or be the breath. It's not so much watching the breath, which seems a little conceptual or intellectual, but just feeling the breath, being the breath as it goes out. In Trungpa Rinpoche's tradition, we don't follow the in-breath. We breathe out, go out with the breath dissolves, and we either just rest with that or have a feeling of our body. And then the next breath goes out. We go out with the breath. The next breath, we go out with the breath. So let's do that for a moment. You have a good posture, wakeful, upright. And as you breathe, you go out with the breath. It dissolves into space. And then the next breath comes and you go out with that. Now, the third point of the practice concerns the mind. No doubt you will get distracted. It may take one breath, it may take 3 breaths, it may take 5 breaths, but you will certainly have other things popping into your mind besides the breath. That's fine. The purpose of this practice is not to become an expert breath follower. The point of the practice is to become familiar with the way your mind works and to make friends with your mind, to be gentle with your mind, to accept whatever appears in your mind. To help us do that, we have one more point of the technique, which is to label whatever appears in our mind as thinking. So we have our good posture, we're breathing, we breathe out, the breath dissolves, and then we find we're off in Timbuktu, worrying about the price of souvenirs, or whatever the heck it is. At that point, you don't need to berate yourself. You don't need to criticize yourself for getting distracted. Quite the contrary, you can appreciate the fact that you've noticed that you're distracted, and then label it as thinking. The reason we label it as thinking is because we consider whatever appears in the mind as thought. We don't make some big distinction between an emotion, a feeling, a concept, a discursive rambling, or whatever it is. It's all just thinking. It's all just appearances to our mind. So that's the technique. That's the way Trungpa Rinpoche taught shamatha meditation. Shamatha itself, the term means cultivating peace or abiding in peace. The notion here is not so much that you're going to get rid of any disturbance, but you're going to make peace with whatever occurs in the practice. If it's a disturbing thought, pleasing thought, an emotion, whatever it is, we accept it, we welcome it, but don't dwell on it. We let it come and let it go. As Suzuki Roshi said, we let thoughts come and go, but we don't serve them tea. So that's the practice that we'll be doing. We'll sit for 5 minutes, just quickly to review. Good posture, wakeful posture, loosely straight. Breathing naturally. As you exhale, you go out with the breath. When you get distracted and notice that you're distracted, you're already back, but you can label it as thinking as a form of punctuation. So that's the practice. Please enjoy. I don't have my gong handy, and I'm just going to signal when the 5 minutes are up without it. So take your posture and you can begin. You might want to turn away from your computer or your phone so that you're not staring at all the faces on the screen. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. I'd like to tell you a little story. This is a story that is said to have taken place around the time of the Buddha's enlightenment, shortly after his enlightenment. One of the five people who trained with him and became his first students after his enlightenment was named Ashvajit. And Ashvajit was practicing perhaps something very similar to what we have just done, maybe in a forest, I'm not sure. And at that time, Shariputra, who had not yet met the Buddha, came upon Ashvajit and was very impressed by his calm and peaceful demeanor, his kind of radiant quality. And so he stopped and he asked him, "Who is your teacher? What does he teach?" Apparently, Ashvajit was not terribly confident that he could explain the Buddha's teachings at any length, and somewhat apologetically said he was new to the path, but his understanding was that and he said this in Sanskrit, Om ye dharma hetu pravavana hetum tesham tathagata he avadat tesham chayo nirodha evam madi shramana swaha. I am repeating the Sanskrit, probably very poorly, because it's something we find again and again in various Buddhist texts and liturgies. What Ashvajit explained was that those dharmas that arise from a cause, the Tathagata, or the Buddha, taught the cause and also their cessation. Those were the words of the great mendicant. Those dharmas that arise from a cause, the Tathagata, taught their cause and also their cessation. And this is really the quintessential summary of the Buddha's teachings. The teachings on cause and effect. Songsar Khyentse Rinpoche likes to talk about Buddhists are believers in cause, condition, and effect. We're not particularly believers in creator gods or nihilism, but believers in cause, condition, and effect. And the reason we are so interested in this is that the Buddha was not a philosopher. He was not a moralist. He was really interested in one thing: the causes that keep us bound in samsara and the causes that can liberate us from samsara. That's the point. Any Buddhist teaching ultimately comes down to that. What is it that will benefit us to end suffering and realize liberation? So the formula that has been handed down to us, which probably isn't exactly what the Buddha had to say, but since we don't have a lot of recordings of his actually saying this, we'll have to make do with it. But the basic notion he presented was what's called the Four Truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path. And these truths form two pairs: the truth of suffering and its cause, and the truth of liberation and its cause. This is what the Buddha was interested in: how we can cultivate the causes of freedom instead of the causes of suffering. Now, suffering, at least in English, has the sense of some like big deal, emotional, painful problem. It's got a fairly limited range in English, but the Sanskrit term that we translate as suffering is dukkha, which has a much broader range of meaning. I think you can probably tell from the main reading for today, where Trungpa Rinpoche talks a lot about anxiety and psychological issues, that dukkha means a lot more than just, oh God, this is so terrible. It ranges from real intense pain to the most subtle discomfort. One of the supposed origins of the term dukkha is the way an axle fits into a wheel if it's not quite right. It's dukkha, one of the meanings is it's a bad fit. So if you imagine a wheel that turns on an axle that isn't quite, the hole isn't quite round and the axle isn't quite fitting, and it doesn't turn smoothly. So every time it goes round, it bumps or it squeaks or it doesn't flow. There's this sense of a bad fit. And dukkha, our experience of dukkha, is often just like things aren't flowing. Our life is not flowing perfectly smoothly. We never have the experience of just being completely in the groove, cheerful, peaceful, joyful. Something isn't quite right. So dukkha has this range of meanings, from the slightest discomfort to the most intense psychological trauma. I think this is helpful because if we think that the Buddha was just talking about the horrible stuff and our intensive reaction to that, then we will miss the point that all our experience is touched by dukkha, some sense of ill at ease, that we don't experience much genuine peace. And the point of all the Buddhist teachings is that we could experience that our experience could be Sukha, the opposite of Dukkha. Sukha is a good fit. It's often translated as bliss or joy. So the Buddha's approach was very pragmatic, and no matter what Buddhist practices we're doing, whether there's some very elaborate visualization practice that we might encounter in Vajrayana Buddhism, or very simple, just sitting, being mindful, whatever it is, the point is always the same. How do we create the causes of Sukha instead of the causes of Dukkha? So understanding this is important. It helps guide us as we journey on the path. Instead of thinking that we're supposed to be mastering some great skill to become some who knows what. The point is always to discover this possibility of freedom, of Sukha, of genuine relief. So I didn't want to say too much today. You've already heard quite a bit from Tashi and the meditation instructions and so on. And we'll go on to talk about the other three truths next week. But today, I just wanted to get us started with this key notion, dukkha, dissatisfaction, suffering, the pervasiveness of it, that once we can acknowledge that, then we can start to tread on the path. So I think we can proceed to the breakout rooms now. And I'm going to suggest a prompt for what you might do when you get in the breakout rooms. First of all, please introduce yourself to the other people there and maybe say a couple of words about where you are and why you're here, but just a few words. And then if you're currently experiencing dukkha, you could discuss what that's like, how you feel it. Do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your mind? Does it seem to be caused by something external or internal?
Someone keeps muting me. So the raise hand is under the react box in the bottom panel, and I can see two people already raised their hands. So I'll just go ahead and I will ask them to unmute. Sitara.
Hello.
And you can also, if you turn on your video, I will add a spotlight. So we can also
no,
see.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Maybe next time. So I have a question, and that's because I'm doing separately the four contemplation into another type of retreat. And my question is, why do we start with the fourth contemplation, which is dukkha, during this program? I'm quite curious.
So the question is, why do we begin with talking about dukkha?
Yes.
Well, I think there's a very good answer to that, which is that if we don't acknowledge the dissatisfaction we experience, then there is no path. There is no point. And if you don't have any experience of dukkha, if you only are experiencing bliss, well, you really don't need Buddhism. We have nothing to offer. You're already enlightened. Did you want to say some more?
No, thank you.
Sophie, do you want to unmute yourself and start the video if you want?
I'm sorry, I cannot open my video, but I really find today's teaching is quite inspiring. My question is, Trungpa Rinpoche says, pleasure itself is a painful pleasure, ultimately completely painful. My question is, how does this match our daily experience chasing pleasure? How can we verify the truth of suffering in practice? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the part before the question?
Sure. How does this match our daily experience chasing pleasure? How can we verify the truth of suffering in practice?
Chasing what?
Chasing
Pleasure.
pleasure. Chasing pleasure.
Oh, pleasure, chasing
Yeah,
pleasure.
pleasure, yeah.
Well, I think the way this matches our daily experience is that chasing pleasure is dukkha. That is the definition of dukkha, is chasing after pleasure. We have some dissatisfaction, and that is why we are trying to find something else.
Yeah, right. But so dukkha has different levels, and many kinds of dukkhas are subtle. How can we verify that, identify that quickly? That's my question. In daily practice.
How do you identify it quickly?
Yeah, in
Yeah,
daily experience.
probably the best way is to feel how it is in your chest.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the quick answer.
Thank you very much.
Sangeeta?
Hi, Andy. I have to just tell you, though, from the get-go that I do have some background in Vedanta and Srividya, which is probably the Hindu version of Vajrayana. So my question is about suffering and its correlation with cessation of thoughts. I'm just trying to understand it from a Buddhist concept. Because when you have this, as I don't know if you're familiar with this chitta vritti nirodha, where the fluctuations of the mind are calm because you have a thought and a thought is linked. One thought has a pre and a post link. And if you manage to find the little gap, and if you meditate and you meditate, and that gap enlarges, and you're able to abide in that gap, right? And I mean, it's indescribable. You can call it a moment, but I'm sorry, I thought I heard something. So my question is, um, would you then correlate, how does Buddhism correlate dukkha to cessation of thoughts? I mean, is it a...
Great question.
Thank
Great
you.
question. So it seems like our thoughts are what are torturing us. It often seems that way, that if we could get rid of our thoughts, we could find peace or bliss or Sukha. But if that is our approach, the moment we have a gap in our thoughts, we have the fear subtly that they're going to come back, that we don't really rest. We can't get away from our thoughts. You can't get away from your thoughts permanently. Maybe you can calm them enough for a few moments of peace, but you're still caught in this cyclic existence of trying to get out of thoughts, having a moment or a few moments of not having thoughts, and then the thoughts coming back, and so on. So that's a very temporary approach to dukkha. The actual freedom, and here I'm getting ahead of myself, but you asked such a good question that I'm going to go ahead and try to answer it. The actual freedom is that you recognize the nature of thought, and then whether you have thoughts or not, they are equally liberation. Did you want to say some more?
No, it's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to understand how it was viewed in.
Great.
And when you say Buddhist, is it generic, or is it like part of a, like, is it part of a tradition? Or because I do understand that the course we are doing is non-secular. I mean, it's non-sectarian, right? Like, it's the course that we're doing right now says that all paths can lead to liberation. So
Yes. I can only present from the tradition that I'm trained in, which is Tibetan Buddhism. I've had a little experience with Zen Buddhism, but not a lot. And within Tibetan Buddhism, I've studied particularly the Kagyu school tradition. So that's my bias is in that direction, but I am trying to present this, and I think we will all be trying to present from a very broad sense of what the Buddha taught. So, as long as we're talking about the Four Truths, I think all the schools would say, yes, there is dukkha, there is cessation, there is the cause of dukkha, there's the cause of cessation. Okay. Ines, hello.
Hello, thank you so much for this. I have my question is concerning the shamatha practice. I was wondering, why do we only follow the out breath and not the in breath also?
Well, Trungpa Rinpoche's instruction on that is that we're trying to get out of centralizing on ourselves. Normally we are so self-involved, and by following the out breath and the dissolve, it's letting go of that self-centeredness and relating more to the space around it than, our territory.
Thank you, very beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I think it's the turn of Shibashish, so please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, thank you for today's lovely course. My question is that I believe somewhere you said we in the course of the meditation we have to search for Sukha, not Dukkha. I may be wrong in understanding the whole thing, but well, isn't that searching for Sukha is also a attachment? Isn't it also a clinging?
Absolutely.
And also to bring a little, I just practiced 10 days meditation at the Vajrayana, at the Burmese tradition, where in the meditation process, we are talking about the samyava, the balance, not to get attached to the other side of rag and dvesh. That's so. I'm just wondering, is Sukha is that rag part, that's the attachment part, or it's totally a different concept altogether? Thank you.
Yeah, so in meditation, we don't search for Sukha and we don't try to get rid of our dukkha. We just need to recognize it. So, if you're trying to experience bliss when you're meditating, that's still, as you point out, that's still some sort of struggle. That's still some sort of attachment. So no, you don't want to try to develop Sukha. Sukha is the basic letting go of struggle altogether. So you can't struggle to get rid of struggle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Elroy?
Yeah, hi. So is the impermanence the same nature as dukkha?
Is impermanence the same nature as dukkha? Well, I think we experience impermanence as dukkha because we cling. We cling to permanence, and that produces dukkha. But impermanence is just the way things are. It's not particularly sukha or dukkha. It's how we relate to it that produces the sukha or the dukkha. In other words, if as things arise and cease, we can let go and be with it, no problem. If we are struggling with it, problem. So maybe we have time for one or two more questions. We're getting to the end of our hour and a half, Paul.
Paul, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Teachings say life is suffering, while there are also teachings from Buddha's teachings only, which says that suffering and liberation, like samsara and nirvana, is one. So if we take from that perspective, if I'm at peace, how can I relate it to suffering? Like when I'm at completely calm down, when I'm at peace, how can I say that I'm still in suffering, and vice versa? So if I'm having an agitated mind, if I'm really sad, and how can I relate it to not suffering?
Okay, well, maybe next week we'll talk about how that works, but samsara and nirvana are one, but if you don't recognize it, it's not going to do you any good. That's the short answer. Most of us make a big distinction between dukkha and sukha. We are generally experiencing dukkha. Even when we are calm, there's some undertone of maybe the calm isn't going to last. Okay, last question. Chancho, hello.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for the teaching. I would like to ask about the practice. When you told us to, actually, I used to do that similar fashion where I watch my breath or watch my thoughts. I don't react, just watch it. But what I have experienced is that watching thing gets tired and then I fall asleep most of the time. So is it a right way or is there some technique because this happens so many times. Even just watching my thoughts makes me sleep because I get tired mentally. So am I doing it wrong or I would like
Well,
to know.
you may be trying too hard. You may be putting too much effort into trying to follow all the thoughts, and maybe you just need a lighter touch. But also, sometimes when you're practicing meditation, it makes you drowsy. That's one way that the mind fends off our awareness. That the awareness is just too sharp and bright. So rather than experiencing that, we fall asleep. And you may need to just work with sleep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry,
Okay,
no, sorry. May I say something?
sure.
Thank you. I have noticed, according what I put in the belly, what I am eating, it's make a big difference. Huh? There are things we eat that we are fall asleep, and it's an important fact.
Can I just say something too, very quickly? Because I remind me, Jimmy Rinpoche talk about the posture during the meditation, and we need to be very careful about our posture. He explained very deeply. So if you have the chance, if someone can give you that, I don't know, by writing, please listen what Jimmy Rinpoche taught because he explained very well the importance of posture. Even though when you look a little down can bring you downness. So please sleep, and I hope your meditation will be okay in the future. Okay?
Okay, so thank you all. We're going to wrap up at this point. Appreciate so much this opportunity to talk about the Dharma with you. Next week, we'll be going further into discussing these truths, particularly the truth of dukkha in some more detail. I'm sorry we can't just jump right ahead to Sukha and cessation. We need to go into a little more detail before we can do that. But please, I encourage you to stick with us. Do the reading if you can. At least do the main reading, and if possible, some of the optional reading. And thank you for being here today, wherever here is. So have a good afternoon, evening, night, morning.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Tashi. Tashi, was there anything you wanted to add as a closing comment? Do we have any announcement? I have one announcement for those of you who didn't have a chance to ask your question or share your experience. We created the Facebook community group. I know Facebook is not very popular anymore, but it's good for the big group like ours. And maybe if we all join, it's going to be easier for us to, hold ourselves accountable and with the readings and the summaries and everything else. So please join. I sent the link in the chat right now, and we're also going to send it over an email. And we also have a little announcement that this program is obviously free, as we shared, and it will remain so. However, we received a lot of requests on how to offer the donation to cover our admin expenses, as we didn't expect this would be like such a big group. So we had to had some expenses, and yes, Siddharth in 10 Europe kindly agreed to offer us help with collecting the donations. If this is something you want to do, please use the link that I'm gonna post in the chat right now. So I hope this will help. For the Chinese speaking community who cannot join Facebook, we have a very kind, some of our participants were kindly offering their help. It's Helena Wang, Jing Rui, Sukha, and Deva, probably someone else. So we hope you can self-organize and maybe create a group or a community in whatever platform you think is convenient for you. So please do so. And if you want to organize any group in your language, to watch the recordings or discuss in your language in French or Spanish, also you can use Facebook to self-organize or reach out to us. We will share contacts of those who submitted their country as Spanish speaking or French speaking. So yeah, that is it. And this recording will be shared by the email newsletter along with the readings for the next week. And also we wanted to say that the Zoom link for the next session would be absolutely same as this one. So now you all have it, and please use it.